Hey everybody, welcome to Auto Fever. My name is Ali, and today we are here with Louis from Auto by Design to talk about this beautiful 1966 Jeep Wagoneer. Louis, thanks for being on the show.
Ali, thanks for having me. Good to see you again. It's always great having you guys here at Auto by Design.
I appreciate it. Louis, I know this is a classic car. What can you tell us about the history of this car?
Well, there's actually a ton of the history on this thing. Kaiser Jeep Corporation back in the early 60s, I believe it was 1962 actually, sure. Commissioned this for 63 model to come out to replace the original Willys Jeep station wagon. Okay. And that's how it all started. Now, this one in particular is a 66, which was the only production year for the Super Wagoneer. Now, what we're getting into here is really what I would consider a fundamental cornerstone on what we would refer today to as a luxury SUV.
Right.
These things were originally designed to compete with Land Rover's SUV at the time.
So Louis, I know this 1966 Super Wagoneer is a little bit more luxurious than its predecessors, the Grand Wagoneer. What are some of the, I guess, things that they did to update this compared to the predecessors?
So in 1966, when they came out with the Super Wagoneer, one of the largest amenities that was a huge deal back then, believe it or not, okay, was something like a seatbelt.
Right.
Okay. Also air conditioning.
Wow.
How about power brakes? Okay. A power tail lift gate, well, a power window on your tailgate.
Right.
Dome lights in your ceiling.
Interesting.
They used to call them courtesy lights. Okay. A push button radio. Okay, so in other words,
very basic stuff.
Very basic stuff compared to what we would consider things that are standard in some of our luxury vehicles nowadays. So that's why I thought it was important to point some of these things out, because again, we're talking about this thing being on the forefront of paving the road for what a luxury SUV is today.
Interesting. And Louis, I know that the Wagoneer was the longest production model of Jeep in Jeep history, right? 29 years, if I'm not mistaken. What happened afterwards when they stopped?
So, yes, Ali, the success of the 29 years of Wagoneer paved the road for something newer to come in Jeep. So when they were done producing Grand Wagoneer, they came out with what's called the Jeep Grand Cherokee, which, as you know, is still around today. And some of our viewers out there might not know, but it is the largest selling SUV in the world.
The number one, right? Fantastic. Well, Louis, thank you for all that great information. I'm ready to take this car on a ride.
Let's do it.
Awesome. Let's do this. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Ali, man, just sitting in this thing, man, we're in the 60s, bro.
It feels like we're in the 60s, man. This is such a classic car. It kind of, truth be told, it kind of takes me back to my childhood, you know? I'm an 80s baby, but like growing up in that era, seeing the movies and everything.
I mean, when we were growing up, this thing was only 20 some odd years old.
Yeah.
I mean, fast forward to now, 2018. Talk about blasts from the past.
Absolutely.
Dude, this thing is 50 years old.
It is.
It's half a century.
It is. It doesn't feel that way, though. It doesn't feel like it's a 50-year-old car.
No, it doesn't.
It's so smooth when you're driving right now.
And for 50 years old, I mean, you're sitting right next to me. I mean, you can hear this thing is quiet. There's not a lot of road noise. You got this big, huge steering wheel that you just kind of,
Right.
you know, when you're driving it. And you know, for 50 years old, this V8, I mean, it's got power, man. You hear that thing?
Look at that.
It's ready to go.
It's such a, let's go back to the 60s. This car is the definition of a family vehicle.
Yeah.
So spacious, you know, room for the kids, the husband and the wife, the storage in the back.
Power tailgate.
Yeah.
Well, at least the glass.
Right.
To come down. I mean, think about put yourself 50 years ago, before any of these power tail lift gates or anything like that. I mean, these are like little options that we take for granted. So, you know, your wife, or you're at the grocery store and you're coming back out to your car, and 50 years ago, if you had one of these, a 66, you put the key in, put that back window down, boom. You don't have to worry about opening the tailgate while the kids are running around. You just put the key in, turn it, window comes down, bam. These are little amenities that we take for granted, and it all started with this.
Yeah.
It all started with this. You know, I know it sounds stupid, but tilt on the steering wheel. I mean, it's just crazy to me.
You know, what really gets me with this car is how spacious it is. You know,
Yes.
now
Very
don't,
spacious.
don't hit the brakes too hard, but I'm just gonna go sit in the back seat here.
Yeah, jump back there.
Look at that.
Plenty of room.
I can literally go back here and take a nap. There's so much
Excuse me.
space. And then I noticed the chair right here also goes
Folds
down.
down.
Yeah, so you, like, if you got a surfboard that you want to put in the
Yeah.
car, you know.
Well, the back seat does too.
Yeah.
And look at all the space you got back
That's a
there.
lot of
So,
space. This is
I mean,
incredible.
you know, SUVs didn't really exist yet. I mean, the term SUV definitely didn't exist.
Right.
But you know, this replacing a station wagon, you know, like I said, it's one of the first SUVs. You know, this is something you can put the whole family in. If you needed to go to, you know, they didn't have Home Depot back then, but you know, or Woolworth or whatever it was called. You know, you needed to go get supplies or whatever. You could bring the whole family and load the back up. There's not a ton of vehicles that you could have done that with.
Now, Louis, question for you here is, this car was made in the 60s. It was designed for the 60s. You know, even this, like everything that this car is designed for the 60s. How does this car compare to today's day and age? You know, like if someone wants to buy this car, for example, and they're driving around a Wagoneer from the 60s, how does it compare to now?
Well, the cars that are driving around now would not be what they are if it wasn't for the Grand Wagoneer. Again, I mean, we touched on some of this stuff earlier on in the segment, but you know, those little luxuries that we take for granted nowadays, that are mostly standard options in most SUVs now, you know, were extra cost options or you know, considered a luxury. You know what's really funny to me, man? On this little drive that we've been doing,
Right.
we've hit a couple of stoplights, and I'm looking around, and everybody and their mother has got their eyes on this.
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's a classic, you know. Some of these older folks that are walking, they're like, I remember this car.
They're like pointing. They're like, oh, you remember Billy? We had one of those.